What is going on, YouTube? It's Ed here in my Where's Waldo outfit, and we're gonna be talking about something a little bit more serious today with the CEO of Goldman Sachs, David Solomon. He is demanding people return back to the office to work, and the junior bankers are not having it. And basically, a lot of them in this title says junior bank are publicly threatening to leave Wall Street for tech or other competitors, probably too, as CEO demands full-time return to the office. So basically, all of their junior bankers and analysts or whatever you want to call them they're not happy about going back into the office. They've been working from home for the last 2 years, like a lot of people, and they don't see any reason to return. David Solomon, who is also a DJ, which I just found out, and he is not happy about it. Like he wants people back in the office, despite no real tangible evidence that going back into the office actually helps anything. So, but I feel like this is gonna just spiral into something that's going to be a lot bigger, because Goldman Sachs, if you don't know, is like one of the biggest banking institutions in the world, if not the biggest, maybe. I don't know. But they have been. But I feel like this is going to set some precedent in terms of like what big companies can do, because a lot of big tech right now is forcing people to go back into the office. Like, Google is for sure one of them. I think Apple has always been anti-work from home, anti-into the office. They truly believe in this, like, oh, the best ideas come from when you and your coworker are walking, to your next meeting, or, talking next to the water cooler type of situation. Like, they really believe, like, these things happen in that sense. And I'm like, and for me personally, I think that's completely crap, because it's like, I doubt the iPhone, like, they have to prove me the iPhone or like the iPod or something was thought up in one of those conversations. Like, it's like, I get a feeling like that probably didn't happen. But anyways, so basically at this point, what David Solomon is saying is that, like, he believes going back into the office is valuable because 75% of the workforce are millennials and Gen Z, and he believes by going back into the office, it creates a good culture of learning and mentorship from the young to from the older folks to the younger folk. First off, let me just say this: millennials are not that young anymore. All right, like, the majority of millennials are now are in their 30s and about to turn 40. So we are the middle management at this point, some senior management, depending on if Gen Xers actually like to promote people, and tons of boomers aren't leaving their jobs. So anyways, so we're like we're at this point where a lot of Gen Zers are graduating, and yes, they do need mentorship, and they do in a lot of ways need to be guided in their career path. But there's no evidence right now, at least for the time being, that going into an office fosters that. Senior leadership, or just leadership in general, and management can just set more one-on-ones with their junior execs or whatever, and just have more conversations with them. There's a lot of chatting programs like Slack, Lark, Microsoft Office, or whatever, the Teams or whatever the heck that's called. There's all these and Discord. There's all these programs out there that you can just talk to coworkers from. And granted, a text chat is not the same as like in person, talking like I am to the camera right now. But you can always set these up. Like, it doesn't have to be in office. And yes, like, there's a lot more natural interaction where, like, so and so will tell you, like, hey, can you run this research report for me or whatever. I don't know what they do. Or like, oh, can you look up this ETF? I'm guessing that's what they do. And then and then like your boss can be like, hey, like, when you look this up, look for this and this, and like kind of like guide them on that way. But you can do that over text too. Granted, it's a little bit more robotic and you're just reading it. But you can also set up like, situations where he's like, oh, let me share my screen with you, let me talk. And I feel like this is up to really management to be like, hey, like, why don't you just be more personable, instead of, if you're having a weekly one-on-one with your employees, like just and people on your team, instead of just talking like, oh, how's your week going, what are you working on, like what are like 3 ups and what are 3 downs, like talk to them, get to know them. Like my managers have always gotten to know me except for one, and like, it's like, hey, like, what do you do like on the weekends, like what, they learn a little bit more about my family and my personal life a little bit, for what I'm willing to share. They try to actually get to know who's working for them, so that that way you're not just in like a business like transaction or whatever you want to call it. And so I feel like what's also going to be really really big right now is going to be a lot of Goldman Sachs competitors, like JP Morgan. I don't know who else is out there to be honest. All these Vanguard, all these other banking institutions and finance institutions are going to be looking at this and be like, oh my gosh, like, we've always like poaching from Goldman Sachs because they hire top talent. Now is the time to do it, because like all these people, I can guarantee at least like a good amount of all these junior bankers, guess what? They're going to be looking for something else out there. Because at this point, like, even though Goldman Sachs is saying that like it's employees' choice to return to the office, but internally they track which team has most in-office attendance. So every time you badge in and out, they know if you're going in there. So at this point or another, like, yeah, they'll say it's your choice, but any team leader who has a like bunch of junior bankers who has significantly less people badging in versus another, they're gonna get some kind of email or message from their manager and be like, hey, you need to increase your people badging, you need to force people to start coming in. And it's just gonna start trickling down to all these teams where they're gonna be either punished or in some shape or form they're gonna find themselves in a position where all these people are just gonna be like, look, I don't want to be in the office anymore and I'm gonna look elsewhere. Like, there's gonna be so many people like that's just gonna be having a mass exodus from Goldman Sachs. And here's the interesting thing: Wall Street bonuses average they've already increased like or a lot of banks have ramped up bonuses in order to retain top talent and I feel like they didn't even have to do this if they just gave people the opportunity to just work from home, like if it's just like, hey, look, you can either come in the office or not. But I think a lot of these buildings, they're just like, well, like, we're renting the space out for like 1,000 people, and if only 200 come back, like, that's a lot of wasted space. Yes, it is. And a lot of commercial real estate are probably like freaking out right now, or because like there's a lot of companies that are just like not renewing their leases, or they have already stopped renewing their leases. Sorry, that's distracting me. And yeah, they're probably thinking like, well, what the hell am I gonna do with all this space now? Because the thing is, you can't just re-rent it out, because less and less companies are out there actually wanting to rent this office space. 2, you can't just repurpose it for like residential, because there's a lot of zoning laws, there's a lot of licenses that you need to do for that, like, and you'll probably have to do like a massive remodel of all those floors. Be like, okay, now instead of office spaces, we got to put a kitchen in all these, we got to put bathrooms everywhere, and we got to redo all like everything, right? Like, they're going to spend millions just to remodel and hopefully rent it out. Like, arguably in the long run, they'll probably still make money on it, but they're probably looking at the initial cost and be like, no, that's too much. Plus, like, again, like all the zoning laws, like, because certain buildings are only zoned for businesses. They're not allowed to make it residential. So that means going back into the city or the county and be like, hey, like we need to either rezone this or do something else. And even if that happens, there's no guarantee that these units will rent out or be sold, So there's that part about it. And it's like, I'm sure there's a lot of pressure from like the commercial real estate for people to just go back into the office, because it's like, well, if one person's there's these like commercial real estate companies who's like, well, like their entire industry might go down the drain in the next 5 years, or have been going down the drain because no one is using their offices. Because it's one thing to just have an empty office as long as someone's renting it, but it's another thing when people stop renewing their leases and then it's like, well, this is just go unused. And I think that's the big thing for Google, because they don't lease a whole lot of buildings, they buy most of them, so they have all this money into commercial real estate that's not going to be used, so they're going to be hurting in some shape or form as well. Anyways, I feel like if I was a competitor, I would be definitely going after Goldman Sachs junior bankers and try to recruit their talent. And overall, I feel like this is just, David Solomon, he's 60 years old. He is definitely a boomer who is, has a archaic way of thinking of how people work. Like we have so many things and technologies these that can connect with each other. And granted, yes, it's not the same as being in the office. Like I agree, but a lot of it can be replicated, and people can still meet up with each other in some shape or form. People can still have a lot of social interactions. Like if one thing, like I've actually been a little bit more social in the pandemic, because now, like, since I can't meet up with my friends, we make it more of a opportunity to meet up with each other online. And granted, yeah, it's not the same as seeing people in person, but like, a lot of my friends who have kids, it's like, okay, they can't always go out to happy hour or to dinner or to lunch or whatever, because they have so many obligations. But because of virtual, like, Zooms and like Google Hangouts and whatever, like it's like, okay, now they don't have to really like worry about that. It's like, oh yeah, I can totally talk to you for 20 minutes while my kid naps in the other room. Or like we'll set aside a time where we can all chat online, after the kids are asleep or something. They don't have to look for sitters, and yeah, we still catch up. And yes, and like everyone will always say, well, it's not the same. Yes, it's not the same, but it doesn't mean that like I'm completely removed by them. Like this isn't like if say something like this pandemic happened like 30 years ago, during like before the internet, yeah, like people would just like all we had was like telephones and mail to contact one another. There was no like in-person meetups or there wasn't no like video conferencing. So at that point, like, yeah, like you would start, that would be an issue where like you would just have these like these social interactions would just not be happening. But now that we have this technology, there's no reason why we have to go back to the old way. The old way is not always the best way. So, but that's just my take on this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and whether you like work from home, whether you like a hybrid mode, or whether you want to go back to the office. I know everyone's a little different, but just let me know what you guys think about this whole thing, and whether Goldman Sachs will what they'll do in the future. Let's predict it. I think that David Solomon's gonna have to he's either gonna dig his heels in and be like, no, screw you guys, you can quit all I want for all I care, and then I'll just hire more people and then give them more money. Or he's just gonna be like, all right, like I don't want to rehire like 500 people. I'm just gonna relent on this whole working in the office thing and just let you do whatever you want. Let's see what happens. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys come back and look for more content. Talk to you guys later.